Sojourn by Robert P. Fitton, Part 1, Desperado. The book begins on another planet where the Montang and Trebor, the little boy, are being chased by huge alien creatures called Creods. The Montang are part of a cult that needs to resonate to a mystical group of beings called Tabun Shah. They're on their way to the shrine. The shrine contains a passageway to other worlds. They have a book they read from called the Saber. The learned one raises the saber to the sky and speaks the ancient words. Trust your convictions and the way will be made clear. There are green flashes in the sky out over the ocean, and the ground is shaking. The Montang hide under the ledge while the huge Creod cluster ships have zoomed across the sky. And the learned one gives directions to the shrine between the Carpin and the Berilliton. Tom Loftus wakes up. His psychiatrist, Phil, should have deciphered all this Creod stuff. What is going on? He's in San Francisco. It's July of 2048. Loftus later is with Phil, and he's scared. He repeats what the Montang has said about the inner vengeance of the Creods. Phil wonders that if during the Sino conflict the Chinese had used mind control on Loftus. Loftus was a DSS agent, highly trained with the Panthers and high up in the intelligence of the U.S. military. Phil talks about a central feed description of alien beings similar to the Creod in Loftus's dreams. Loftus thinks back. Allsworthy had just received the nomination for president. Loftus commanded all security at Long Beach, but Loftus ended up being the scapegoat for the explosion that killed Allsworthy. Norman King, as president, walled off the cities in the United States. Loftus shook his head. He was a fool for rehashing all of this. He drives across the bridge to a secure phone on the San Francisco side. He gets on a portal and talks to Waterballoon. People are being murdered, according to Waterballoon, and RIMA, R-I-M-A, is involved. The intelligence agency's research and development. Loftus is hesitant to become involved. Later at the loft, Loftus's close friend and military companion over many years, Zach, brings Waterballoon in the company van into the basement of the loft. Loftus now knows he's forcing himself back into active duty by responding to this at all. Waterballoon is short and thin with tight blue eyes and short dark hair. Loftus asks, "Who are you?" He gives Waterballoon whiskey and water. When Waterballoon says he's from Appleton, Vermont, Loftus is taken aback. Loftus went to school in Appleton, Vermont, and left the love of his life back in Appleton. Waterballoon is a rookie recruit in a hick town and has been given information that John Garvey, a cowboy, high-ranking in the service, is involved in this operation. Zach and Loftus draw their weapons at the mention of Garvey's name. Waterballoon tells them that he was good friends with a man named Joey. He had no last name, and Loftus later learns that Waterballoon worked for the local Homeland Security Office. He mentions a company called Denver Communications that has something to do with the project going on up in Appleton. He said it's more like science fiction, staggering. Satellite transformers that transmit invisible electricity. The cover is superconductor research. Waterballoon tells them about Phase 1, where everything will be brought together in whatever's going on up at Southeast Mountain in Appleton. He mentions a Dr. Horace Vandermeer. At his university office, Dr. Vandermeer has the list of those people who have been killed. Loftus knows that Vandermeer was a high-ranking service officer. He said a few deaths were necessary to bring the project forward. Joey, Waterballoon's friend, gave him DeLuca's portal address. Waterballoon's name is O'Brien. Loftus has to get O'Brien to a safe place before the intelligence agencies track him down. He tells Zach to bring O'Brien to his friend Mikey's apartment and place a guard outside the door. Zach answers him from his days in the service. "Will do, Captain." And then he asks Loftus, "Are you sure you want to get involved in this?" Loftus thinks that this high-pressure way of life has returned like a quick rail train down the track. He hoped that he wouldn't retreat inside his dreams like he often did, back on the other planet with the Montang and the Saber and the Tabun Shah. He plays back a disc from Frank DeLuca, his old service boss. DeLuca's hair is grayer, but he hasn't changed that much. He sits in front of a glass and brass clock in the background. He talks about the shenanigans going on at Southeast Mountain, where you went to school, Tommy. As Loftus listens to the disc, there's gunfire across the bay in San Francisco. He thinks about Kath and how he loved her and how she stood motionless at the bus terminal 20 years ago when he left to go in the service. He liked living life on the edge and then living to talk about it. Mikey arrives at his apartment. Mikey is a reporter. He talks about the 525 bands on the wall screen. He wants Loftus to see his report. Loftus doesn't watch the news anymore. Inside the studio, a three-dimensional image appears. There's a gang battle in New York City. It's a simulation, according to Mikey. Loftus thinks all simulations are damn dangerous. He tells Mikey that he wants him to go back east to Appleton, Vermont. Mikey, who knows Loftus very well, says, "You're Appleton, where you went to school?" And then he says, "You've decided to look her up," speaking about Kath. Something else is going on here, according to Loftus. He shows O'Brien on the screen when he arrived at the office in the van. Loftus needs to see if this whole thing that DeLuca talked about up at Southeast Mountain is real. But Mikey says you just don't want to see her again. Loftus avoids what he says. Mikey will do it. He'll go back to Appleton, but he wants all the rights to the story. But he tells Loftus directly that she's the reason stopping Loftus from going back there. Loftus tells him this is a service project. He needs to know about these murders. And Mikey tells him you just want to nail Harmon Monday and get him out of the service. Loftus talks about the 57-second delay and how the intelligence agencies can track down a call after 57 seconds. He hands the receiver to Mikey and tells him to call on a direct external line once he makes contact. Loftus says, "Don't worry about me going after Harmon Monday." He looks out the window, and again he thinks about Kath and what his life could have been like up in Appleton. He has no compunction about facing John Garvey, one of the toughest intelligence officers, but facing Kath remained his greatest fear. He again makes contact with Phil, and Phil has thought about his dreams and his passing out, moving into another realm. He says that Loftus has been searching for something with these visions. Loftus says he is not a religious man. Phil turns the tables on Loftus and tells him he's taking responsibility for Allsworthy's death. Loftus shakes his head, and he mentions Allsworthy by name. "All my bases were covered at Long Beach. Nathan's dream is gone because of me." He crunches his lips together and talks about how incompetent Harmon Monday is. On his wristcom, he is notified that O'Brien has arrived in Mikey's apartment. But Phil tells him that you want to be the hero, Loftus. That's what you need to be, the hero. There's nothing bad about being the hero unless you're not the hero. Loftus said you make it sound like destiny. Later on, when the loft is closed down, Zach arrives. Loftus is drinking a straight scotch. Zach tells him that he's getting that old-time feeling again about the angst of being in the service. Maybe Mikey shouldn't have gone to Appleton, but Zach is able to speak freely with Loftus. He tells Loftus, "You're afraid to even be on the East Coast with Kath. You always deny your true feelings," he tells Loftus. Loftus again begins talking about something else. Monday must know about all these antics at Southeast Mountain, about Phase 1, and how scary that is with Monday in control. Loftus again settles back and dreams about being with the Montang. He's Trebor, on another planet. He's on top of his father's shoulders, in a circle with other Montang members around a fire. And they're saying only Tab and Shah can rescue them. There are people down in the bay bobbing in boats, with flame torches moving up and down in the wind. They quote from the Saber, talking about the flying demon of death, the destroyer, as the Learned One speaks. Trebor asks, "Where is Tab and Shah?" "Not of this world," his father said. As the Learned One says, the oneness is the totality of the good. The Montang is on their way to the shrine, to a passageway to other worlds. As he hears the Saber and his father speaks, flashing green light appears across the bay. Glowing silver cluster ships and green beams spread across the bay, destroying the Montang in the harbor. Loftus wakes up. What does it all mean? He hears about reports from Canada, the Central Feeds Band, talking about huge alien creatures at Bonnie Bay in Canada. Loftus looks at his clear, triangular medallion that he's had since a youth. Mikey is calling on his way back to Appleton. Says that the wristcom is working properly. Loftus moves down the stairs into the loft, toward Zach's room under the stairs. Zach has uncovered information. There is no Denver communications, as O'Brien had said. He has Mr. O'Brien's complete record. He suggests that they get him out of Mikey's place immediately. Vernon Crawford, Loftus's first case officer, and some greenhorn have been sent up to Appleton to investigate. He wishes now that he hadn't sent Mikey back. Later on in the day, the wristcom sounds again, and Mikey's muffled voice is from the second floor of the science building where Vandermeer's office is located. However, Vandermeer will not be back in town until Sunday night at his house south of town. Mikey knows about Vernon and another guy, and they're staying at the Appleton Motor Lodge, room number 123. Vernon Crawford, an African-American agent just ready to retire, is on the phone with Bud Connors, the local police chief. Vernon is talking to Connors and can't stand the man's verbose attitude. He gets off the phone and looks at his compadre, the young agent Bronsky, and says what a blithering idiot Connors is. Vernon is now making coffee. His retirement is 58 days away. Information on O'Brien is found by Bronsky. He left under the name Winslow, David Winslow. He headed via quick rail to New York and then San Francisco. Vernon wants to know why the intelligence agencies sent him up here anyways. Vernon gets on the phone with Chief Harmon Mundy. Mundy is a rambling, bumbling fool. He says that O'Brien is just a nutcase and that we don't want to disturb the Pequot flow. Crawford doesn't know what he's talking about. Mundy then says that Joe Atkins' death is just an accident. Crawford hangs up the phone and looks at Bronsky. He says, "Superconductor's my arse. This is a setup. There's no record of a Joseph Atkins. And who picked up O'Brien in San Francisco?" Mikey makes his move to Vandermeer's compound before he arrives. He has Zach produce a fake resume for a man named Miguel Arroyo. Mikey begins snooping around and speaks to a foreman with a Spanish accent and gets a job painting the house. It's a 3-winged white house, huge house, on a plot of land south of town in front of the mountains. Security men are everywhere. He has put on a detail to paint shutters for the house. More security people arrive later in the day. When Vandermeer finally shows up, he's wearing a blue seersucker suit. Mikey goes inside and studies the interior of the house and claims that he has to use the bathroom. But what he really wants to do is hide in the attic near the heating ducts and record what's going on and get it back to Loftus. John Garvey will be here in 36 hours, he hears. He heads up the carpet runner to the second floor. His plan is to provoke an argument with the foreman, Hector, and then move up into the attic. When he finally implements his plan, he has a listening device. Up the stairs, they think he stormed off the property after an argument, but Mikey is really up on the third floor, behind the crates and boxes in the attic, and listening through the galvanized heating duct. When someone comes upstairs, Mikey stays put. Nothing happens. Soon, when Garvey arrives, he hears his abrasive voice in his earpiece. Garvey later gets in confrontation with one of the scientists named Garrett Raster. He tells Raster that Phase 1 will begin tomorrow, but Raster says they're not ready for it. Mikey knows he must get this information back to Tom Loftus in San Francisco. Garvey is then accused by Raster of killing Joey Atkins. Raster says he doesn't even know where the technology has come from to transmit this electricity. Garvey then hits Raster. He's looking for O'Brien and wants answers, to the point where he actually fires a gun and kills Garrett Raster. At that time, Vernon Crawford and Bronsky show up in a vehicle out front. Crawford realizes that Raster has been murdered. He gets upset with Garvey, who says, "Temper, temper, Vernon." Vernon curses Garvey and finally leaves. Mikey is thinking of a way to get downstairs and get this information back to Loftus. Mikey taps his wristcom button. It's 3:35 in the morning. He moves downstairs to the second floor outside hall. There's a blood splotch absorbed under the bricks outside. Along the patio, lights begin to blaze. He quickly sprints to the road. Car engines are starting, and he heads toward the corn stalks across the way. Bushes on the edge of the field lead to pine groves at the base of the mountains. In a few hours, sun will rise over the valley as they start this phase 1. Daylight slowly overtakes the area as Mikey climbs the mountain and nears the summit. From the summit, he can see the library at the university and a smaller building to the right. He faces the mountains and climbs the metal observation tower with his wristcom on. At the top of the valley, he sees 5 black antenna dishes by Southeast Mountain. Back in town, Vernon and Bronsky are surveying the countryside toward the mountains. They have complete pictures of everybody on the site at Vandermeer's property. Again, Vernon wonders what the hell they're doing up there and why they were sent. Then he notices somebody on one of the mountain towers. The facial match is to Miguel Arroyo. At that time, brilliant yellow and orange sparks emanate from the antennas and sonic booms rumble across the valley. Mikey is afraid that they're going to track him and climbs down from the tower and starts running down the mountain. Jetcopters right at treetop level track him down the trail. He tumbles to earth as the weapons open fire and everything fades from view. Loftus tells Phil that he's leaving town. Phil holds Loftus's clear triangular medallion in his hand. At that time, he says that the news report on the central feeds from Canada matches Loftus's description of the Creods. They're 7 feet high. Loftus doesn't understand why the two things are related. Zach is at the bottom of the stairs and whispers to Loftus later that O'Brien is dead, 1 hollow point bullet to the head. His close friend, Arias's jet, is warming up, and they need to leave San Francisco immediately. Both men head down through the freight tunnel and now are heading back to Appleton, Vermont. Later in the week, John Garvey marches into Harmon Mundy's office in Washington, D.C. Mundy is telling him how we don't even have to generate the power, we just transmit it. He says there's cash on the bulkhead. He's quickly corrected by Garvey that it's the barrelhead. Mundy is a boob. Garvey wants to know who has all this power to transmit. Garvey is also worried about Loftus in San Francisco and his connection to O'Brien. At that time, Mundy says that the entire operation is being run by the Premium Mobile. The next phase is about to commence, and that phase involves controlling the central media feeds. Mundy says that a talented Rubicon could be responsible for all this. Again, Garvey doesn't know what he's talking about. The Premium Mobile has respect for DeLuca and wants to work directly with the president, according to Mundy. And then he tells Garvey that he's going to be promoted and that he'll have women sent up to his hotel room. But overall, both men know they have to impress the Premium Mobile. In Washington, D.C., Mundy brings in Vandermeer to Frank DeLuca's office to demonstrate the next phase. He's telling everybody not to rock the boat with DeLuca. DeLuca tells his aide to help Vandermeer bring in the scientific applications. Vandermeer has done all the work, but Mundy is trying to take the credit. What they have accomplished is a completely interactive artificial intelligence. Instantaneously responds to a human. And then it flows like reality. Norman King, the President of the United States, is on a screen in a news conference that never happened. This is the way they will control the central feeds of the media. Loftus and Zach have arrived in Appleton, Vermont. He drives near the bus terminal where he had left Kath so many years ago, and he now realizes what a mistake it really was. He speaks to Zach and wonders where exactly Kath is. He signals for Mikey's motel and pulls into the parking lot. The trees in Appleton look higher, and the buildings are about the same. Mikey is not at his hotel room. He finds the portal screen in the room. Zach opens the portal, but they can't find Mikey. They head down to the village trough. He pans the bar room. Loftus glances at a booth where he had bought Kath a drink so many years ago. He reiterates to Zach that he doesn't want to make any unscheduled stops in Appleton, but he admits that the past is tugging at him. In the restaurant, he makes contact with Vernon Crawford. Vernon says, the gang's all here. Loftus calls him an old goat. He wants to talk to Vernon back in his room. Vernon Crawford was Loftus's first case officer. Loftus goes back to his room with Zach. Somebody knocks quickly a few minutes later on the door. Vernon tells Loftus to get back to his San Francisco restaurant right away. "Get the hell out of here, Tommy. I'll pay for the ticket." And then he brings up Mike Brand's name. He doesn't understand about superconductors. Vernon is shocked that O'Brien is dead. Loftus and Vernon go outside to get away from the suspicious Bronsky. It's at that time that Loftus learns that Garrett Raster was killed by John Garvey. He and Vernon talk about the death of Nathan Alsworthy. Crawford tells him that a man named Dave Horton was standing on the Vincent Thomas Bridge in Long Beach as the yacht carrying Nathan Alsworthy blew to smithereens. Horton was near the Catalina ferries. He boarded the ferry for Avalon. Mundy was on that ferry and had cordoned off part of the area. He was notified before the explosion. Horton said the lower area was buzzing with personnel on Horton's phone. Horton disembarked at Avalon over on Catalina Island. Since then, Horton was murdered, his throat slit. Every record of the incident has been wiped clean. Vernon believes that Loftus was set up as well as Bronsky and himself. "They killed your friend, Mike Brand. Pack your bags and go home." At that time, Loftus says that his contact is Crow's Peak, and he wants to know if DeLuca knows about Horton. Bronsky steps forward. He has some issue with Loftus's plan. Vernon wonders how he has an agency, Riscom. Back at the hotel, Loftus looks up in the Appleton-based directory and finds Kath's address, but he assures Zach he'll never go there. Loftus again retreats into the dream world, and he's carried with the Learned One as they sing praise to the ancient ones of Tabun Shah. Then they talk about the Suryath Khan, the one who will rescue the entire Mantari people. The little man runs back through the woods and warns them that the Creods are on the planet. The creatures are here. They need to secure the women and children out of the way. Trevor feels secure in his father's grasp. The Montaigne hurl rocks when the Creod creatures arrive. Trevor's father is hit by one of the creatures. Another one is on the sandy shore and uses his claw to behead some of the other Montaigne. Trevor wonders how they can go on now. His father has been weakened by the attack, and his father says they must follow the ancient word and find the passageway. Director Haman Mundy is on a jet, experiencing turbulence as he heads north toward Bathurst Island in Canada. He realizes now they should have presented everything to the president first and not Frank DeLuca. Phase 1, however, has been a success. And then he calls the Premium Mobile. The Premium Mobile is on a speaker. He has a stilted, echoing voice. He commends Garvey's actions against Raster, and he wants to find out who Aurelio was really working for in San Francisco. Mundy's hands are shaking in fear and calls the Premium Mobile Mr. Alsworthy. Alsworthy says that name is from another place and time. What they need to do now is link the entire power grid to Bathurst and control the central feeds. Peace and civility will return, according to Alsworthy, the Premium Mobile. And then he calls Mundy a self-serving coward. Vernon drives through Appleton Center. Loftus and Zach are in the trunk of the car. They are going to Vandermeer's compound. Vernon says, "You can come out when you hear me sneeze." When they do hear him sneeze inside of a garage, the doors are shut. Loftus then goes over to a Mercedes and pushes open the trunk. Zach pops the trunk with tape across the lock and they crawl inside. They move quick once they are inside the facility. Vandermeer comes out later and starts the Mercedes engine. Vernon Crawford was warning Vandermeer not to go off the deep end with all these experiments and projects. Vandermeer backs the car into the driveway and he tells Vernon to leave. He also mentions that John Garvey is out of control. Loftus realizes they're going up the Route 114 grade toward a secret facility as the Mercedes climbs the hill. It's a short, steep grade. They move downward into an area where the project is taking place and are parked inside of a garage designed for 20 or 30 cars. There's a camera just above the door. Zach dislodges the camera and produces a false image for the computers. Along the inside are beige lockers with white fatigues. Fake images are now caught on the camera. Loftus, his gun pointed up, moves up to a prodigious room upstairs. The hum from some machinery is drowning out everything in the lower area. He has his recorder going as they move along a catwalk and slide down a door and then down 11 flights of stairs into a cramped area with metal pipes and wires. Zach locates an unsecured landline. Vandermeer is on the telephone. He says the coil gradients are not at peak. Then he talks about some place called Bathurst Island in northern Canada. Everything is being done invisibly from northern Canada. Loftus tells Zach that Frank DeLuca needs all this information. There's a door next to the work area. The alarm stops right there. Loftus again says he's getting that old-time feeling, and Zach nods his head. Loftus shoots open the door. It's a storage area with blue barrels of carbon tetrachloride that are stacked all the way up to a duct system. He shoots one of the barrels later, and the spark ignites the clear liquid. There's a low, deep vibration as they escape into the ducts. He coughs uncontrollably and follows Zach as they roll into an open area below. More explosions down the concrete stairs shake the area. Dozens of blue uniformed security troops are following them now. Loftus says they had better hope the luck holds out. He rolls back into the garage and then cranks the Mercedes engine. The back window explodes in gunfire. They end up popping open the doors as the car rolls near a ledge. They leap from the car as the Mercedes careens down into the gully and explodes into a burst of fire. They run into the woods down an incline east of town. Gray-black smoke now emanates from the entire project. There's a Priority 1 alert sent out over all frequencies for the intelligence agencies. Loftus knows now he cannot get through to DeLuca without being monitored. The sky is now filled with jet copters searching for the two men. Loftus knows the trails along the edge of town and to the north toward Canada. Mundy finds out there's a fire at Appleton. He doesn't know that when Vandermeer calls him, but he feels like he'll be blamed by the Premium Mobile for all of this. He lands at Bathurst. He again gets Dr. Vandermeer on the line. They talk about intruders in the facility. He wants John Garvey up there in Vermont. Orders go out to kill the intruders. Everything must remain secret, and then he gets a visual playback. Tom Loftus and Zach Grasso are the intruders and have severely damaged the facility. Loftus is dangerous according to Mundy. Why Tom Loftus? He has trouble tracking down Garvey, but when he does, he orders Garvey to kill Loftus and Zach. I won't have Tom Loftus on the loose up there. The Loftus is on the McGonquin Trail up into Canada. Let's not rehash Long Beach, said Loftus. Mundy had the ferry to Catalina, a medical facility on that ferry. Loftus thinks that Allsworthy has survived the explosion at Long Beach. At noon, they crossed the state highway. Loftus and Kath had been up here years ago. They moved down into the woods and across the spillway, where he had changed his mind about entering the service, right here at the spillway. He only now comprehends what he had given up. Overhead, jet copters inundate the skies. Soon, he bounces between Trebor and the spillway, but manages to keep his thoughts together as they approach a small reservoir and a footbridge. Kath is just up the trail a few miles ahead to the north. As the choppers go over the trees, they head down the forest road. He needs to go by Kath's residence and out of town. Vernon knows about the explosion. He thinks that Loftus is moving through the woods because he knows the story of Loftus and Kath and how Loftus knew the trails out of town. He tells Garvey directly, if you jeopardize either one of my friends, I'll kill you. He is sure that Tommy will go north to Kathleen Grady's house at 415 North Street. Early smoke over the mountain facility had now cleared. He looks in the rearview mirror. The blue van from the hotel is back at the lights. From a weathered basalt ridge, Loftus looks down and wonders how they could hide. They can't transmit anything to DeLuca. The central feeds will be covering this as a national news story. Deeper into the woods ahead, they move out of town and leave on one of the freight quick rails. Mid-afternoon, they stumble into a cornfield. A young man on a horse meets them. He's John Grady, Kath's son. Agent Crawford had described Loftus. Vernon had described him and Zach. Vernon also thought they would be traveling along the trails. As the jet copter moves overhead, Kath approaches on a light brown horse. She wore a blue jersey and her long brown hair furrowed in the breeze. He couldn't stop himself from walking toward her. She tells him her son left a rather lengthy note about a service agent who came to her house. Loftus is emphatic that he does not want her involved in any of this. She asks, "What are you doing up here, Tommy?" "They want us dead," said Loftus. "I can't let you two get involved." Getting the information to DeLuca now is the main thing. She has a rough terrain jeep that she'll help them get out of town. "Old feelings still linger, Tommy," she says. "The years have crunched, but it was as if he had never left." Harmon Mundy fixates on the tarmac. Mundy hated Tom Loftus. John Garvey then calls Mundy. "He's in a copter over Southeast Mountain. This man threatens everything I've worked for." There are now 8 jet copters in the air and dozens of civilian unmarked vehicles. Vronsky's missing bags causes Vernon to be anxious, and the blue van from the hotel is missing. On the central feeds, Loftus is described as a disgruntled former Panther thrown out of the service. Garvey is on the Riscom. Vernon asks him, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "He's heading toward the Grady cabin. Having trouble receiving you, John." Gets in the car and drives 70 miles an hour toward the cabin. Garvey is demanding to know where Loftus is. If Vernon will tell him, he'll throw out all the charges against him. Loftus is indeed above the cabin in the hills as the choppers move overhead. Now they must get to the overland trail that will head north toward the quick rails. She sends John back to the cabin. "To get away from here, Kath, and pretend I never came up here." She wants to know why the jet copters are all over the place. She hands her field glasses to Loftus. Loftus watches as Vernon pulls up to the cabin. A large chopper rises over a brick farmhouse. Vernon waves John north through the woods. He tells Kath they're going to continue up the trail. She says that they can go to the Stanton house. John Garvey, Loftus sees, is in the copter. 2 more red-bellied copters appear. Vernon is shouting at Garvey from the cabin below, claiming Loftus had a gun to his head. There are more copters in the sky now. 5 convoy trucks block the outside drive. He tells Zach that Garvey is about to destroy her cabin. And then he's overlapping with Altashar, and he's Trebor again. Garvey gives the 1-minute warning. Loftus asks about the Stanton place. There's gunshots. Garvey is shooting down. Vernon is shooting up at Garvey. They head toward a rocky cliff as the cabin goes up in black, billowing smoke from the chopper. He holds Kath's long hair next to his chest. His friend Vernon is dead. She could never return now. They move across a bridge, over a stream, and into an abandoned quarry. He had to get the scan to Frank DeLuca. "Screw Garvey," shouted Loftus. Zach has to hold Loftus back as Garvey takes John out of the house and heads toward Bathurst Island. Mundy is pacing the floor. Loftus's death has not yet been confirmed. The premium mobile gives a verbal barrage that berates Mundy to a squirming bowl of jelly. He's in front of a massive, glossy black desk. He stands like a criminal on trial for murder. Allsworthy, aka the premium mobile, is a bald corpse of a man as he rolls out in an electric wheelchair. He's upset that Vernon Crawford has been killed. He knows that Norman King planted the bomb at Long Beach, and he also says that Tom Loftus must die. As they wait for the quick rail to D.C., Zach has set up a trip mechanism. They will then get inside one of the cars. He monitored Garvey, saying that Mundy is involved in all of this. The quick rail approaches and slows toward the bridge. As the train stops, the doors open, and they move inside with Kath. He now knows that John is in Garvey's jet, heading up over Canada. He laments Vernon's death. Vernon was a good man, but he insists that Frank DeLuca will help them. It's all a convolution of errors. He looks at Kath and says, "I thought I was doing what I wanted to do." And he says that he never stopped thinking about her. How would it have been? We had the world in front of us. We just let it dissolve. He lost his balance and hit the storage crates hard. Traber now dragged the foodstuff bag across the ground. How could they trust Taban Shah? He held his medallion, the Bunshaf. Do not trust in your own ways, trust your heart. He heard voices. Traber started sobbing as his father died. In Washington, D.C., there are firefights as Zach, Loftus, and Kath wait for Frank DeLuca's limo. Dead bodies are rotting in the alleyways. Sirens and further gunfire are in the distance. DeLuca is scheduled to arrive shortly. Headlights move around the corner as he pulls in. He says, "You guys are in big trouble. There's a nationwide alert out on both of you." Garvey had everything sealed out of Appleton. He tells him, "Let's get the hell out of here. The service has cut off all the central feeds." He says to Loftus he's going to shut down the hanky-panky up at Appleton. They're blackmailing the government. Then the other shoe falls. Mundy and Vandermeer have advances that even Rima couldn't come up with. They control images so people can see the central feeds in the bands. The president is due back tomorrow. Mundy says it's for security, but he's lying. He gives Loftus a special frequency number for his own house, and he wants to get them to a secure station in a safe house in Virginia. He tells Loftus, "It's been a bad day when my cat knocked over my antique clock just this morning." They have additional frequencies at the station. Once they are in the safe house and later, they talk to DeLuca at his house. DeLuca says that all is set with the president. The president was shocked, but he took action. DeLuca's book collection is in back of him, and the glass clock chimes. But that was the clock that was shattered just this morning, and now it's not. He brings Zach outside and talks about the clock. He thinks it's Mundy's simulation, and they need to leave the safe house now. But troops are surrounding the house, and a convoy arrives. The convoy is moving down the street as a Lieutenant Parsons comes out and confronts them. He tells Kath he can't believe what's happened. Then he spun backward back to another place. A fuzzy rainbow and pyramid is overhead. It's the larger Bunshaf, and he realizes that the Taban Shah must save them from the interventions. Traber runs and fingers the softness in the wall of the huge Bunshaf. He steps through the surface as the cluster ships hug the desert floor. There's a slab and an archway beyond. Across the mosaic floor and the green canal on the side, there are copper-sailed boats as the attack continues outside. Zach snoozed, but when he woke up, he tells Loftus he had passed out. They are at a huge lodge in the hills, with a river running swiftly in the distance. There's a landing strip with camouflaged transports, suborbital planes, and one of his favorite generals, Isaac Watkins. He faces Loftus. Loftus last saw him in China. Watkins is standing in front of a huge map of the United States. Mundy is not within 500 miles. This area where they are is a staging area supposed to be used to stop urban violence. DeLuca has been missing last night since midnight, and apparently the transmission that Loftus saw was a reality simulation. Isaac Watkins says we're all on our own. We won't communicate until we take the island. He looks at Kath and tells her, "I'll get your son out. This operation will be limited and quick. Bathurst Island has a minimal defense." He tells Loftus the planning is done and I need your help. Loftus is to go in there with 165 men. Loftus studies the schematics of Bathurst Island as he sits with Kath on a riverbank. She tells him that she should never have let him get on the bus. And then she tells him that John is our son, Tommy. He wants to go back to Appleton when this is all over. A few hours later, they're all on the transport as Zach sits across from Loftus. The Earth magnetic pole crossed Bathurst Island in the 1960s and 70s. The complex is shaped like an inverted cone down into the Earth. They want to attack with a sleeping gas and then a high-pitched battle, according to General Watkins. Loftus wants to see the look on Mundy's face once they attack Bathurst. He takes nothing for granted. He wondered if anyone was listening as he prayed to God. The first wave is ready to take Bathurst Island. He focuses his thoughts on Kath. Getting back together with her in Appleton crosses his mind several times. He lifts his Bunshaf medallion off his neck and stares at it. Then they get ready to jump. There are radar dishes below and a gray island shoreline. 52 soldiers are sleeping down in the complex. Steam spews from side vents. They throw the gas canisters into the duct. Loftus says they're going to shut down this place and then move down below. Foam barriers are placed over the barbed wire fence. All transmissions are out until Loftus gives the word. Then he leads them below. As they circulate the gas around the area, he wonders about this transmission of electricity in these turbo fields. Where are the troops, he wonders. They get down to level 6 in the hallway when a gunfight starts. Men are stirring below, says Parsons. 2 are dead. There's a smoky haze that drifts through the area as bullets ricochet around. And then they approach an open area. Loftus fires rocket launches. Zach is down, however, and is possibly dying. Loftus spots him in a pool of blood. He then shoots 2 Bathurst soldiers. Medical attention is needed up there right now. He looks at the shrapnel holes through Zach's uniform. His lifeless face and bloody trail do not give him hope. Isaac's second wave had begun the assault down into Bathurst. Zach is taken away by the medics as Loftus moves forward in the jeeps with 60 men. Loftus says they're going below. At that time he hears John Garvey's voice. Isaac's voice is on a wavy signal. Power within the complex is somehow altering the signals. His scanners show prodigious power below. And he moves down through the rock opening in his open vehicle. He enters the stainless steel elevators. Mundy has left for the turbo fields. The turbo fields power the generators from way below the surface. 25 men advise Isaac Watkins to check. And Zach is checked and brought away. The Earth's magnetic field has something to do with all this, but something else isn't right here. Lower scans remain inoperative. There are minute electrical charges pulsing through a nebulous field. It's like looking into infinity. Harmon Mundy is far ahead. Loftus moves down the corridor in the open area and says, "This man is my problem." Static crackles and blue light bursts as Mundy in a red bathrobe yells that he's innocent. Loftus wants John delivered to him within 15 minutes. At a window span, Isaac says Mundy knows where DeLuca and Kath's son are located. Loftus had learned in his life to take the prudent course. The men were left in another staging area. He wondered if Alsworthy might really be alive. The concrete shakes upstairs. Nathan has survived the Long Beach explosion. A strange voice tells them that they are prisoners of the realm, superior force in the universe. Isaac's face tightens as a lanky green-shelled being moves forward. Loftus holds his Bunchoff medallion. The being has 2 bubble-like eyes, smooth skin, and is a Creod like in his dreams. A swift screen of brilliant green energy moves forward as men vanish. The being yells out, "Tark has made you prisoners of the realm." Then he wonders whether he was Trebor as he passes out. Trebor is running along the white slab near the canal. Where is the Tabun Shar? We must resonate. The blast hits the shrine. In his dreams, the Mantari climb up the vessel with Trebor. They head toward the boundless green sea. One of the men, Frossel, is swallowed up into the endless ocean. There are no ripples, no tide, and the hordes have destroyed his world. Tom Loftus now stares up at the ceiling. John and Frank DeLuca are in yellow fatigues across the room. Zach's chest is moving. He talks about the old Loftus luck, but it makes sense now how Mundy got the technology. He thinks about the interventions, linking the power grids to the next phase. He is informed that the premium mobile wishes to see Captain Loftus. The entire room vanishes. He's in a small office. It had all been just an illusion. Loftus says, "You seem to know what's best about everything, Nathan." He tells her that Kathleen Grady is being flown up here from Appleton. Loftus mentions he knows about this planetary ocean. He wants to know, is that how the Creod got here? The premium mobile wants to know how Loftus knows about the intergalactic passageway. DeLuca says, "It's real, Tommy. The creature is real." John knows all about Loftus and Kath now. "I don't remember arriving here. Humanity was attacked by the Creods." They are nearing completion of Phase 1. All the satellites have been linked to the power grids controlled by Allsworthy. There is thunderous applause as Mundy pours the champagne into Garvey's glass. "It's a great day for mankind," he says. Zach and Loftus leap over the edge. They get to the translator. Loftus speaks to the outside central speed. They move upstairs and enter a room where Loftus tries to speak to the outside central feeds, but he feels air on his arms and bristles. Tark, the huge Creod alien, lowers his head into the room. He rips the console with his large appendage. No one on Mantari Earth knew about Altashar. Tark was there when the attack occurred. Humanity will now be enclosed in reality chambers from birth till death. He talks about Sard's Death Empire. He says all Mantari are inferior, and he wants to find the Mantari on each Urkum. He wants to know if Loftus is the Sirif Khan, who will try to rise and save his people. And then he says he sees the sign of a true inferior. "I want this place shut down, Tark," says Loftus. "If Tark cannot destroy, he will subdue." A side silver sheath is produced. It's a weapon. And he kills Mundy, whose body vanishes from sight. Outside, his form disappears. Bathurst soldiers escort Zach away. Nathan and 2 uniformed soldiers appear. "No more barricades in the cities, Tom. No more violence or starving people. You just can't trust this ancient people. Reality chambers are what's important in a virtual world. You will have power over millions if you join me." "You had your chance," says Allsworthy. "So did you, Nathan. So did you." John and Kath are with DeLuca, but then this room also disappears. Loftus is in the dark with Zach. Nathan and a ring of soldiers appear. "How do you like my reality, Tom?" he asks. "I want to make up for the pain." "Throw them all over into the abyss," yells Allsworthy. Loftus is pushed over and starts an accelerated freefall after Zach. Trebor and the colored particles enter his head. He takes the clear Bunshoff. "It's part of your destiny," says his father. "Don't ever let it go." There are gold charges like electrical pulses in every nerve fiber. He's been falling for 45 minutes. There's a trail below in the white glow toward the distance. Zach is down below. Something is going on in the white light. Somehow he knew the area. This passageway had always existed. It's a mammoth structure. If they can kill Tark, they can get it all back. Then he wonders about this Sard. What if he has a fleet headed toward Earth and his Death Empire will arrive? He tells Zach they'll need water pretty soon. 8 hours later, they move down the edge to a slab with no seams or joints. He scoops up some of the ethereal green mass. "Just like your dreams, Captain," said Zach. "It's real. A wormhole linking planets." He checks the boats. Food packets have gooey blue liquids inside. The boat rocks slightly. Gold cylindrical canisters are down in the second boat. He goes back to the slab. The boat dips a third time and Zach falls over and the boat starts moving along within the energy along the canal. Loftus runs down toward the open area. He leaps and the green energy is up to his neck. The boat is moving across the endless sea. The rudder is stuck. The copper sail is receding away from shore. They will never return to Bathurst. Then Loftus recites Kubla Khan. Through the wooden dale the sacred river ran. They reached the caverns, measureless to man, and they sank in tumult to a lifeless ocean. Amidst this tumult, Kubla heard from afar ancestral voices prophesizing war.